Good evening, everybody, and welcome to possibly the most sort of off the cuff stream that I've done so far, actually. So, firstly, let me just say hello to everybody. Hello to Bodega Rat, Yas, Ibero, Kenrico, and all of the other lurkers in chat. And yeah, as some of you have noticed, this is a very interesting stream. I mean, you can probably already tell based on what's being shown on screen right now. But first things first, my name is Shanaha or Shanaha or Shanaha. Pretty much whatever you say, there's no wrong way. And today, I'm not playing anything. In actual fact, I'm gonna be working. It's essentially like an excuse. And you can't hear my voice? Oh my goodness. Is that actually an issue? Let me see. I'm not muted, I think. At least I don't think I'm muted. So, let me know if this is a little bit better. And if you can hear me at all. Because it would be quite tragic if I go on speaking without hearing at all. Ah, you can hear me? Okay, that's great to know, Bunzel. Thank you. Can you hear my voice fine? Ah, thank you, Kenrico. Ibra, maybe it's something on your end? Could be muted, most likely. Wait, sorry. Were you muted? Or did you have your speakers muted or something? It's fine. It's absolutely fine. But yeah, like I said, I actually have something very, well, not really important, but I have a progress report for one of my assignments due this Friday. And you know, I'd have a lot of it done by now, but considering the past few months, I've decided to, I'd say, procrastinate a little bit and focus a bit less on my work for university and focus a bit more on things such as streaming or watching other streamers and just, you know, enjoying life. But now I come to 5 days up until the deadline, and well, not really a deadline, but 5 days left until the progress report is due, and I've realized I've actually not got that much done on paper, at least, to show. Don't get me wrong, I have done work. I've done a decent amount of work, I would say, but it's just that I haven't really put it down in text to show. Now, you're probably wondering, what exactly is this project that I'm working on, right? I mean, Ibra, you kind of maybe had a glimpse at it because you noticed that there is an engineering tag in this, and on the screen in the bottom left hand corner you'll see there the title is I actually can't see it for myself because it's so small. I've titled it The Categorization of Porosity Types in Steel Sand Castings. I know, quite the thriller, isn't it? But believe me, well, maybe it's not the most interesting thing, but I'll try and do my best to explain it to you in a way that anybody can understand. Just in case you would like to follow along with what it is that I'm actually working on. Of course, the whole point of the stream is, it's rather selfish really. It's more of me just working by myself, and you know, if there are anybody out there who would like to sort of work along, just, you know, have the stream up in the background while you work, it, you know, it kind of helps. Because I remember when I was doing my studies, or, you know, before COVID times, it was always very nice to have, you know, friends around you working together, you know, study groups, right? And I feel like maybe there are people here who have also been like me, been procrastinating a lot, and they just need some motivation to get some work done. So hopefully I can provide that motivation for you. Or alternatively, if you just want to shoot the shit and ask me about steel sand castings or anything else that's on your mind, you know, feel free to ask away. Will there be fancy Young's modulus graphs? Young's modulus graphs. Please don't remind me of that. Thankfully, I hope not. There will be many graphs though to look at though, Ibro. So I hope you are ready for that. But yeah, so first things first. Let me open up this door to my project of steel sand castings. So let me actually pull up a little graphic over here. The way steel sand castings are made is, you see here, you have a mold, right? And you have molten steel that gets poured into this mold, and that molten steel is hot, like really hot. And it'll flow in from the pouring basin here on the right side, and it'll fill up this mold. Think of it like casting parts, right? Now, once that molten metal is solidified by cooling down, I'm sure most guys will understand this, but when things get cold, I'm sure you understand they sort of begin to contract, right? I'm sure guys will have a very good image in mind of what I'm trying to say, but essentially, as things cool down, they contract. So, as this molten metal cools down in this mold, it begins to contract. Now, that raises a little bit of an issue, right? Because they will start to become cracks, essentially. This is obviously a very simple description of it, but because of the metal cooling down and pulling together, obviously, there are multiple scenarios of how it can contract. It could contract from the outside so that there's a gap, essentially, between the end of the pot and the mold, or it could be that there are cracks that form within the pot itself, because maybe all the molten metal, is all pulled out like a hole, almost like a singularity. Watching your favorite streamer and get to learn a little at the same time. I'm glad that you're learning. It's I don't know if you're going to use this topic or use this information in the future, yes, but you never know. It could come in handy one day. But yeah, so as the molten metal cools down, it'll start to contract, and there will almost always be cracks. It is very difficult to do it perfectly with no cracks. You understand something if you can relay and explain it to a simple-minded listener, even better with images. Yes, honestly, it's in university. It's something that I realized as well. There are people who are very smart. They are very intellectual. They know their stuff, but that doesn't make them a very good teacher, and it's a very big issue, I think, with education systems. Hopefully, I don't fall into that same category. I mean, to be fair, I'm not even an expert on this myself. But yes, so it's unavoidable, right, that there will be imperfections in casts. It is literally unavoidable. You can have a theoretical limit, but you can almost never achieve that. It's unavoidable. Now, because it's unavoidable, normally when parts are cast, the manufacturers, they'll say, you know what, it's fine. We can have these little pores or cracks within the part as long as it isn't too bad. You know, there's a certain level of acceptance that they'll have. If there's too many pores, if there's too many holes, then they won't allow it, because those pores will weaken the material. Think about it. If you have a solid steel rod, and it's solid, it's a one full long piece, it's pretty strong, it's hard to break. But if you take that same solid rod and you start poking holes all throughout the entire length of it, it suddenly becomes a lot weaker. And you don't want that to happen, at least with these parts. Especially because they could be for some very important things, such as valves or ducts and things like that, where you really don't want them to fail, or by breaking or cracking and stuff like that. So, that is why those limits are in place. They say, listen, if there's too many pores, we don't accept it. But now comes the situation of, well, how do you determine, the number of pores? Well, there's a thing called, there are standards, engineering standards that people follow, right? And one of them is called the ASTM E2868 standard. And what that standard does is it has a bunch of reference images. Because when it comes to porosity, there are 5 different types of porosity. There's the aporosity, which is gas. So in other words, there's been gas bubbles that have been trapped in that molten metal as it was, being poured in. So you literally have gas bubbles in your pot. Then there is the B category, which is sand and slag inclusions. So it's essentially, bits and pieces of like dirt or whatever got into the metal and it has now been like solidified around it. So think like a chocolate chip cookie, but instead of chocolate chips, it's sand and other unwanted materials, and instead of a cookie, it's your steel part. That's a very rough analogy, but I'm sure you get what I mean. So that's A and B. Then you have 3 more categories called CA, CB, and CC. Poor castings are the worst. Yes, poor castings are, they actually make a very significant impact, with the pores and all that stuff. They reduce the strength of the part greatly. Hence why there are such strict restrictions on that, and why there are these standards. So the other 3 porosity types are sort of similar, they're sort of related. CA, CB, and CC. They are all, how do I describe them? Shrinkage porosity. So it's pores that aren't formed from gas or from sand inclusions, but it's, like I said earlier, it's from the metal. As it cools and as it contracts, little cracks might start to appear. And those little pores from the cooling, the way that they are aligned or the way that they are formed, those determine whether it's CA, CB, or CC. CA is linear shrinkage porosity. So in other words, if you look at the cracks, do they look like they're, as the name implies, linear? Do they form nice straight lines? Are they very, straight and continuous, linked together and stuff like that? CB is feathery. It's kind of similar to the linear, except that that line might have branches. Hence, the look of a feather. And then lastly, CC is the spongy category. So it's more of, if you look at a sponge, it has a bunch of those holes, those circular holes, like SpongeBob SquarePants almost. And so it's all spread out, all very round looking holes. Those are the 5 types of porosity. In fact, I can show you one of them right now. If, like I said, there's a standard called ASTM E2868, which defines the different types of porosities and their levels. Because like I said, when the people will desire a part, they'll say, don't let the porosity be over this amount. Because if it's too severe, they can't accept the part. It'll be useless, essentially. So, like I said, CC is one of the porosity types. And what I've just pulled up now is a graph of the 5 different levels, or at least an example of 5 different levels of the CC porosity type. So if I were to zoom in now, and at the top here, you can see level 1. Now, I'm not too sure how great this will look on stream, but essentially, there's a very faint little splotch, like a little dark patch in the middle there. It's kind of hard to tell, and I suppose that's why it's maybe severity level 1. It's not too extreme, but it's there. If we scroll down to level 2, it's, again, not that bad. It's another little splotch of darkness that you can maybe see here or there. Level 3, okay, whoa, now, if you look in the center there, that spot is looking a lot darker, and maybe a little bit bigger as well. Go down to level 4, and now you can actually see there's 2 spots, one on the right there and one directly in the center. And then of course level 5, that is definitely a big difference from the earlier levels, right? So naturally, level 5 is worse than level 4 worse than level 3, and so on and so forth. And obviously you don't want level 5. You want something like level 1, maybe level 2. But now the issue is that when people say, we don't want it to be above level 3, well, okay, that's fine then. People can go and, or the manufacturers, what they'll do is they'll take samples of the parts. So they'll produce a whole bunch of them, a whole line of them. And they'll take 1 or 2, maybe a handful, and they'll say, let's inspect these parts and see, how porous are they? Do they meet the qualification? Here's where the issue comes in now. What they do is they will look at the part and see, they'll compare. If this is what a level 3 porosity looks like according to the standards, how does the image of their actual part compare? The issue is that this is done purely by eye. So, like, I know this is a reference image now, but let's say I give you this image as it is. I ask you, on a scale of 1 to 5, how bad do you think this is in terms of porosity? Some of you could say, it looks like a 2 maybe. Maybe even a 1. And sure, okay, cool. It's kind of close to 3, I suppose. I could take this same image though, hand it to somebody else, completely different, and ask them, hey, On a scale of 1 to 5, how bad do you think the pores in this image are? They could look at it and say, wow, that's a serious 5 right there, or that's definitely a 4. In which case, you're left with a dilemma. Who do you trust? There's, on one hand, one guy says it's a level 2, which would pass because, the threshold is 3. But on the other hand, somebody else could say it's 4. In other words, it's unacceptable. It's quite a dilemma. But obviously, in theory, the people that you go to are all very trained and very professional. And in theory, they should come up with very consistent answers. But it obviously can get very difficult to have some overlaps or have some discrepancies. It is especially dangerous when it's floating around the borderline pass-fail criteria. Because if somebody's arguing between whether it's a 1 or a 2, but if the criteria is level 4, then it doesn't matter, right? Level 1, level 2, they'll both pass. It's perfectly fine. But if the confusing criteria are on the pass-fail threshold, it becomes very difficult. So, wouldn't it be great if there was a way to objectively do this? To look at this image and say, objectively speaking, with maybe computers or an analytical way to say, this is by definition, by calculations, a level 3 porosity image. No input from people, no chances of confusion, nothing whatsoever. That would be great, right? Well, funnily enough, that has actually already been done. If we look at my literature review here, in my research, I've found a guy by the name of Carlson. I don't know his first name, but he's credited as Carlson. And he has done something very similar, or he's worked on something similar, where that image that I showed you earlier of the five severity levels, what he did was he took each of these images from levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and he analyzed the pores, so the very dark black pixels. And there were 2 criteria that he came up with. First one being the percentage area that are defects. So in other words, that's, if you look at this image, how much space are actually those black pixels, those pores. And it makes sense, right? The higher the severity level, odds are there'll be more pores, so there'll be a higher percentage. The other criteria was the pore circumference area. So in other words, it just measured the amount of edges that the pores had. So in other words, if you had, let's say you have the same amount of pores, but one of them was just one big circle. It did have a decent amount of area, but if you take that same amount of pores and spread them all out, have it instead be a bunch of smaller circles, the area would be a lot bigger, or the circumference area. Hey, you just joined the stream? Welcome, Lord. You're probably very confused as to what is going on, but essentially, I'm just working. What am I doing? Glad you asked. I am working on my engineering project right now. I'm right now just going through sort of description on what it is my project is. It is on the steel sand castings and how to identify the porosity in them. I know it might not be the most interesting thing, but it's work that I had to get done anyway, so I figured I may as well do it on stream. Feel free to, just sit back and relax and listen to me ramble on about my engineering stuff. Or, maybe you have some work yourself to do and you might want to do some yourself, It's always nice to work as a study group, so maybe this is going to be something like that for you. But where was I? Yes. Carlson's methods of determining the severity levels. So, like I said, he found those categories for all 5 of these levels. And you can actually see it on this graph over here. You can see there's a definite trend, right? As severity level increases, so does the area. And what he did then was he said, okay, well, let's compare it. Let's see if this actually works. You don't think you understand, but this is pretty interesting. I'm glad that I can make it interesting at least, because I'll be honest, when I first read through this stuff, I also didn't understand it. And you know what? I don't expect you all to understand this anyway. But I'm glad you're enjoying it, yes? So, yes, you have the 5 criteria, right? Or the 5 levels. You had your first paid day back at school today after summer holidays. Well then this is perfect for you then, I suppose. You know, it's a good old back to school stream. Get some work done. But yes, let's see. So Carlson had this graph of the 5 levels and the expected values for things like the area defect percentage and stuff like that. What he then did was he took actual images from actual steel parts and he sent them to other radiographers and had them, you know, look at it manually. And then he took those averages from those people and what they said, and he compared it to where it would fall on the graph if he did it analytically. And they were all actually really accurate, you know. Like his model, where he predicted what the severity level would be, was incredibly close to what these trained actual human people were doing. Which is great. So now in theory, if we have the production images, or rather the actual physical images of a part, we can compare it to the reference level images, and now we can almost determine quite precisely what the severity level will be. Now, here's the catch though. Like I said, there are 5 different categories for porosity. And in those 5 categories, you know, they'll have different severity levels. Or rather, their images will look very different. So now it's an issue of, we first need to make sure that we are taking the correct porosity types and comparing it to the correct references, which is a whole nother ordeal, because again, that is something that is done purely by eye, by others, by human people. So there's chances for mistakes. Mistakes can be made. That's where my work comes in. I now have to look at an image and be able to say, under what type of porosity does it fall under? Does it fall under porosity type A, where it's gas? Does it fall under porosity type B, where it is sand and slag inclusions? Or does it fall under one of the 3 shrinkage porosity types? Now, here's the thing. You might think that's really difficult, right? Normally, people just look at it by eye and they determine it by that. How am I gonna have a computer determine what porosity type something is? That's the great thing about this. Technically speaking, it's already been done. At least, not for steel sand castings. Let me present to you, if I can find it, the Haralick texture features. Haralick texture features are a way to sort of describe an image. Specifically, its textures, as the name implies. Essentially, if you imagine tiles, right? If you have bathroom tiles that are very smooth, I mean, we can all agree and say, oh, it's a very smooth tile, you know, it's very flat, there's no bumps. As opposed to maybe say like a brick outside. If you feel that, you can say, oh, it's very rough, it's very jagged, it's not smooth, it's not the same. Their textures are different. One is smooth, one is rough. But obviously we can describe that through words, through feelings. But if only there was a way to describe those 2 differences with computers, you know, visually speaking. Because you can look at a tile and say, oh wow, that's smooth. You can look at a brick and say, wow, that's rough. So that is what these Haralick texture features do. They take an image, they look at it, and it generates these 14 different values that determine how it looks. It's things such as contrast, energy, entropy, correlation, all those other stuff. The way it's calculated is a bit out of the scope of this. I won't get too into detail with it, but just know that by looking at an image, you can get 14 descriptive numbers that describe how the texture of that image looks. And in fact, like I said, this has been used before in things like lungs or lung scans. Because what doctors used to do before was that they would take x-rays of your lungs, and depending on what they saw, they would diagnose you. It could be either, say, pulmonary edema, so water in the lungs, or it could be lung cancer. which is quite crazy to think, right? A doctor can take an x-ray of your lungs, or this is before, right? He would take an x-ray of your lungs, he would look at the image, and just through eye, he could either say that, oh, you have water in the lungs, which it's not that dire, you know, it's a little bit of a problem, but he could also say that you have lung cancer. Two very, very different outcomes, all done just by eye. Now, that's something very scary to think of, right? What if you get a doctor that, you know, just he misreads it, he makes the wrong call? Something very scary to think of. That's where the Haralick texture features came in. They used this in order to look at the image and say, okay, let's not have a doctor just go by eye and spitball a diagnosis. Let's look at what the lungs actually look like. These Haralick texture features then used that image of the lungs, like you can see here, and essentially by looking at how much black spots are in the lungs, and also not just how many black spots there are, but where they are, and also how they are clumped together. That is how they would determine whether or not you have lung cancer, or water in your lungs, or just a perfectly healthy set of lungs. And yeah, it is. I'm glad that you do find it interesting, Lord. I try to make it a bit interesting, because I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't really be too crazed about stuff like this. But yes, so that is what these Haralick texture features can do. It's great. It sort of eliminates the human aspect of it, which is really useful. You don't have to second guess yourself. So what I have to do now is essentially use these Haralick texture features and try and find a way to look at an image for steel sand castings. So if you remember, it would look something along the lines of this, right? Now, obviously, I know that this is a spongy type of pour because, I mean, it's literally called spongy. It's a reference image. It's supposed to be spongy. But let's say I have a different image, which I can pull up in just a second, because I actually went and cut up a piece of a valve, you know, like a water valve, and took some pictures of it. Very, very, very microscopic pictures of the surface of the valve to look at its pores. And now the question though is, let's see, where are those images? Ah, here we are. Here's one here. If it loads. Okay, maybe they're not that one. That's a bit of a rough one. Oh, these are all the etched ones. Give me just a second. Ah, here's an image. If I show you this image here, and I zoom in to the spot over here, and I ask you, how does that look? Does it look like a spongy, a linear, a feathery type of porosity? It's kind of hard to tell, right? See, that's why this method is so useful. It eliminates that problem. So the first thing I had to do was, of course, get a basis of knowing, you know, what are those 5 categories? It looks crisp. That is the category I would define it as, Ivaro. But yes, so obviously, if my main challenge is to get them into 5 categories, the first thing to do is to find those 5 categories, right? Makes sense. If you want to put things in buckets, you need to get the buckets first to organize them. So what I did is I took the 5 different reference images. So for example, let me pull them up now. This is CA. Oh, no, sorry, not CA. This is, CA. As you can see, if I can go to the most severe one, because that'll be where it's most obvious. This is fairly linear, right? It's all stripy, stringy, and stuff like that. Now, if I pull up CB, which is feathery. We'll have a look. And if we go to level 5, it almost looks like veins almost, right? Like literal feathers or leaves or a branch. We look up number C. Oh, we saw C already. But if you look at category A, so that is gas porosity. Yeah, you can see that's very splotchy. A lot of dark spots everywhere. And if we look at category B, which is the sand and slag inclusions, you can see here they're not bigger, they're not as many, but they're bigger and they're not as dark. But like I said, each of these 5 images have 5 levels. So what I did was I took each image or each level, right? So focused on this image here as level 5. Focus in this image here as level 4. What I then did with that is I put it into a program called MATLAB, which is, how do I describe it? Think of it as a very, very fancy calculator of sorts, if I can describe it like that. It has a lot of cool functions and a lot of cool equations and things that I can do. And what I did was I got the Haralick texture features for all of those different images. A whole bunch of them. I think I have an Excel spreadsheet of about, let me see if I can find it actually. Like over 200 different entries of data for each of those different, or combined, for all of the different images. What I then did was I categorized them, or not categorized them, I did a thing called an ANOVA test, or an ANOVA test. If you don't know what that is, it's a simple statistical test. I think it's called, let me actually get up the actual name. An ANOVA test is a test to find out if a survey or experiment results are significant. So in other words, I would have a test to compare 2 values or 2 scenarios. It's an analysis of variance. And the scenario that I would test is to say, okay, if I have these images from CA and these images from CB, 2 very different categories, what are the odds that you can confuse them for each other, right? What are the odds that a CA image could look similar to a CB image? And ideally, there would be no chance, right? Ideally, they would be so different that there would be no way you could confuse the 2. But let's be real, there probably are some scenarios where you can confuse them. But I did that for each and every single value of those Haralick features. So 14 times. What I did was I said, okay, let's take the energy of A, compare it to the energy of B. Are they similar at all? And hello, Never Gonna Give You Up. Welcome to a very interesting stream. It's literally me just doing my university assignment where I'm talking about steel sand castings. Feel free to sit back and listen to me ramble on about it. Or, ask questions if you are curious. Or, if you have some work of yourself to do, maybe do some of that in the background as well. And have it be like a little mini study group. Are we looking at the human brain? No, actually, what you're looking at right now is a pair of lungs. An X-ray of lungs, specifically. Funnily enough, I do have some images of brain MRIs that I should probably include later on. But yeah. The reason why we're looking at a brain is because of a sort of a tool that I'm using. When you're looking at lungs, I think I've mentioned it before, so I'll give a quick rundown. But when you're looking at lungs, doctors would normally look at it and say whether you have something like lung cancer or water in your lungs based purely on just looking at it, which isn't very reliable. So instead, there are ways where you can analyze the image and look at it and sort of categorize the lung and say, based on how the lung looks, it's most likely lung cancer or it's most likely healthy. I have to do something similar, not for lungs, but for steel castings, specifically the porosity in steel castings that appears. So, like I said, there are 5 different categories. And what I've done is I've looked at them and I've gotten some data. In fact, I can show you the graphs that I have sort of made up. Let me see if I can find it in just a second. It was actually really... I was really happy when I got these graphs showing up, because it showed that what I'm doing has a chance to work actually. Let's see then. Ref sample. Okay, yeah. So if you look at this graph here, what this shows is energy levels of images. And you're probably thinking, wait, how do you measure energy of an image? Like I said, it's one of those Haralick texture features. There's a whole bunch of math and a whole bunch of complicated stuff that goes on behind the scenes to get those values, but we don't have to worry about that. Just know that we got them. And on the left, you can see the legend. There's 5 different categories: A, B, CA, CB, and CC. Now, each of these 5 categories have values in different areas, you know. If you look at A, it has values ranging from, I'd say, like just over 0.85 up to 0.925. Now, here's the cool thing about this graph. If you look at, say, the value for A, if you find an energy of an image with 0.9, what that tells you is that that image is most likely falling into one of 3 categories, or like one of 3 buckets rather. It is either going to be part of A, CA, or CB. It is very unlikely that it would fall under B or CC, right? Because, I mean, the odds of it happening are so low. The values of energy for those 2 groups are way different. But now the issue is, though, which one is it? A, CA, or CB? It could be any of them, right? Well, that's what the rest of the groups are for, or the rest of the features. We can switch over to something else, like contrast. And now all of a sudden, whoa, a lot of them are clumped over here to the left, and only CC is all the way out here on the far right. And if you look at correlation, again, whoa, we have A over here. This is actually the perfect one, because if you look at A, it is very far off from all of the others. So let's say you have an image and the value for correlation is, let me zoom in actually so you can see better. The value is just over 0.9, right? That tells you that it is within the A category and it doesn't overlap with any other groups. So you can, with a good amount of confidence, say it is very much in group A. Is guesstimating allowed? You know, never gonna give you up. I'm not gonna lie, guesstimating is highly encouraged, actually. Because at the end of the day, you know, things aren't always perfect. Like I said, if you have a value here that is just over 0.9, it is highly likely that it is in group A. Because, I mean, you know, all the other groups are so far off. It doesn't mean it's impossible, though. It just means that it is very, very, very likely in group A. It's entirely possible it could be wrong, and, you know, mistakes do happen after all. But, yeah, that's the graphs for that. So, essentially, with those graphs, I've gotten the 5 sort of, or not the 5, I have a way to look at an image and say, based on the image, based on the values that I get, if I compare it against all 14 of those graphs, because there's a lot of them, odds are I can find out a way to say, with some confidence, what type of category it falls into. For example, I could say, well, out of the 14 different types of features, this image fell into the CA category 10 times. 10 out of 14 times, which is a lot. Meanwhile, it only fell into the B category only once, and the C category only twice. So considering it fell into so many groups for this one category, you would be pretty good to take a guess and say, oh, it's most likely this category. But yes, that is effectively what my project is about. It's about taking an image from a steel cast part, looking at the pores, and then saying, well, based on some of the reference images, it's most likely this type of porosity. But yeah, that is, I say a short summary. I spent, 45 minutes describing all of that. So maybe it's not that short. But let's see though. Like I said, this stream is essentially just going to be me doing some work, because this is only due later on in the year. I think the due date I've written down is early November, like the first week of November. So there's August, September, 3 months. I have 3 months to write this, get all of this work done. Although I have a progress report, the one and only progress report we have, due this Friday. Just pretty soon, 4 days. And I don't want to say I've neglected my work. I've been doing work, but I just don't have a lot of work on paper to show for it. Think it's a pretty cool idea for a stream? It is, or at least I hope it is. It's more of an excuse, if anything, because I need to do work. I mean, like this, I can't avoid this. But at the same time, I wanted to stream as well. So I thought, why not kill 2 birds with 1 stone? Stream and do some work. The whole process was that, I can share my work, and if people are interested, they can come in and ask and maybe learn a thing or two about something they may never have to use again. But at least they know it. Sort of a fun fact of things. I don't expect people to stay and be engaged by me typing up the storm. Because like I said, now that I've explained everything, I'm probably going to go and just start typing up the rest of my report. I'll be speaking every now and then, but maybe some people just want to have some background noise. When you start streaming, you might start doing this. I mean, literally, it's just, people say, just make content, make any content. That's why I'm doing this. I could have just sat by myself and worked on this, but then I thought, well, if not, why not, right? And yeah. So like I said, I don't expect people to be fully engaged in this, but maybe it can help. My thought process was that, there are sometimes people who, they work better or they feel more motivated when they have a study group, right? It's sort of the feeling that you're not alone, that you have somebody else working with you. So who knows, maybe there are people out there who are lurking in the stream that they have some of their own work to do. So maybe they just put on my stream in the background and they're also doing their own work. I don't want to say I stole this idea, but I know there were people on YouTube that did something very similar. Where I think they literally just sat and they studied for 12 hours straight on a stream. And people just sat and watched the guy study. So maybe I'm trying to replicate that, but who knows? Of course, I'll always be watching the chat. So if people do ever, want to say something, have something to ask, or just feel like talking, then feel free. I don't mind taking a moment to respond to people. TBH, never understood how people study in groups. You end up just talking to each other. Yeah, that is definitely... I'll be honest, I was also like that. I couldn't really handle studying in groups. But there were certain times where it helped. For example, maybe you're struggling to work or not really struggling to work, but you need help. And maybe there's a friend there who knows the work better than you. And you can ask them, hey, do you know how to do this question? And you can ask them and have them help out. Yeah, but I'm afraid we can't help you in the West Group. Oh, don't worry, Lord. I don't expect you guys to help me out. And in fact, you guys are helping me out by just, being here. Just, knowing that I'm not alone. Knowing that there are people here who are, whether they are also doing work, whether they're just sitting, listening to the chill music. It helps. speaking of the music, if you want to know what music this is, it is actually a stream. It's that, I'm sure everybody knows it. It's that lo-fi girl, the one that's always sitting at the table, bopping her head, and stuff like that. It's literally just that stream that I'm playing music from. Study groups are useful when somebody doesn't fully understand the concept. Yeah, like I was saying, never gonna give you up. It's less of a study group and more like an impromptu teaching group, I'd say. You know, maybe there's somebody that knows the work well and is willing to share with the rest of the group. Like I said, I don't expect you all to help me because I doubt anybody here knows the intricacies of steel sand castings, but you know, maybe it's just nice to sit back and relax. If you're allowed to ask, which engineering degree are you studying for? Oh, of course you're allowed to ask. Never gonna give you up. I am studying for a mechanical engineering degree. I know the other options were, I think, chemical, civil, electrical, and mechatronic. I feel like I'm forgetting something else. Oh, industrial. Those were the available courses, and I chose mechanical engineering. But yeah, now that I've sort of, I guess, given a brief of everything that I've done so far, it's time for me to actually start working and add on to this report. So I won't go radio silent. I'll definitely need to start focusing a bit more, so I won't be able to speak non-stop like I was for the past, 50 minutes? But yeah, I hope that you all enjoy the stream. Whether you're trying to follow along with what I'm doing, whether you just have it playing in the background, or whether you just want to ask me something. It doesn't have to be related to my work. Right? Maybe sometimes people just want to talk, ask something random. I don't mind. Yeah, let's get working, shall we? If you're out there and maybe you've also been procrastinating, you also feel like you need to get some work done, maybe now's the time to do it. Now then, let's have a look and see. For the most part, from here on out, I'll probably just be mumbling to myself and speaking aloud and airing out my thoughts as I do my work. Let's see. The one thing I have written up so far is I've written up procedures for when I went and got my samples. So let me actually copy paste that over, add some meat to this report and see how many pages I can get this up to. Where is it? Sample preparation method here. I actually have images as well that I can add in. Let me quickly copy all of this. New page. And there we go. So what I just copied now was the steps I took for processing the samples. Let me just space this out so I can read it a bit better. Right now it's a wall of text, but I do have images, so I'll paste those in just a second. All these operations. Polishing grind machines. Grinding methods. Ground samples. Ultrasonic cleaner. But I take images of the polished samples. Ooh, that might actually be something I forgot to do. Let's see. I have the images from when I went to the labs here, so let me start pasting them in. First things first, let's paste this image in. This is an image of The valve that I took the valve from which, whoops, sample was taken from. I don't know why I couldn't spell it for a second. Why does the font look so different? Weird. Insert image of the valve, compare with diagram. Right, yes. So with this valve, it's actually the place I took it from, the place the samples came from, is actually a very important point. It's where porosity was expected to occur. So I need to have that in as well. Lord, you want to know, do I have any plans for a job I'd like to do in the future? Boy, oh boy, that's quite the question, isn't it? I mean, because I'm studying engineering, the logical solution would be, something in engineering, right? Which, I mean, it is always something, but I'll be honest, after starting to stream and realizing how much fun it is, I think I'll most likely have to get a job in engineering, just to make sure I can earn a living. But I will definitely still try to pursue streaming as something that I can do. If possible, if I didn't have to study, if I didn't have to, find a regular job, I would just stream for a living. But of course, that isn't something that everybody can do. It's something I can work towards though, so maybe one day in the very distant future, that'll happen. But until then, it will most likely be something with regards to engineering. Funnily enough, it actually wasn't engineering that I wanted to study at first. It was psychology. I remember in my final year of high school, that was what I was so interested in. The way people think, the way people work, why people do the things they do. That was what interested me. But I remember I spoke to my mom and she said, if you do psychology, you're going to end up as a psychologist and you're going to have to listen to people's problems 24/7. Is that really what you want? And I thought to myself, maybe that isn't what I want. And it was actually at my mother's suggestion that I do engineering instead. Because at the time, I was very good at mathematics and physics. So she thought, it'll be easy. Boy, was that a wrong assumption. I won't say it was, that difficult. But it wasn't exactly a walk in the park. Engineering, that is. But yeah, that's essentially my plans for the future. Essentially, most likely an engineering job, but maybe one day I can stream for a living. I still need to have comparison of the valve. Spoiler alert, in most tech jobs you end up listening to people's problems 24/7 anyway. That is true. One of my friends is actually, he started working as an engineer, a junior engineer, and his job is literally to fix other people's problems. They draft up designs for a building, and his job isn't even to design stuff. It's literally just, oh, by the way, we messed up and this pipe needs to be shifted 1 meter to the left. That's your job, by the way. But on the bright side, you can actually solve them. That's true. It's sort of the nice thing I enjoy about engineering, that everything is analytical. There is more often than not always a correct solution. There's no, maybe this will work, maybe it won't work. You know if it works, or you know if it won't work. And damn, you have absolutely no idea what to do later. I mean, it is a difficult thing, right? Especially now, in terms of, with COVID and everything is so unsure. I mean, this time last year, I thought, I'll finish up, graduate, get a job. But now, I don't even know if I'll be able to find a job after this year. What with everybody getting laid off and all that stuff. So, if anything, I'm more of just taking it as it comes. Out of nowhere, I just suddenly decided, you know what? I guess engineering is what I want to do. It's very off the cuff. Very on a whim decision that I made. Let's see the samples. Okay, yeah, so that is the valve that we cut it from. And yes, so once we had the sample from the valve, we then had to cut it down into smaller pieces. The way it was cut was using this cutting machine, the Microcut 150 Precision Cutter. Don't worry, you'll be surprised how much they need people. That is true. Especially from STEM degrees. If you can graduate from uni, they'll get you with open arms. Yeah, that is true. I think that is one of the the benefits of a STEM degree, right? What is it? High demand. Shortage of actual people though. Also, it seems like my stream died, so hopefully that gets resolved. Okay, I think we're back though. But yeah, especially when it comes to STEM degrees. High demand, shortage of people. What happened here? Image was inserted in the wrong place. There we go. So this was the cutting machine we used to cut the sample down into smaller pieces. To a point where we could cut it down into something that looked like... Uh-oh. What happened now? Oh, Microsoft Word, you and your formatting. Always getting me. So let's crop this actually a bit. We don't need all that extra nonsense around it. One thing I wish I did have though was a bursary, because I know if you can secure a bursary where they sort of guarantee you a job after university, that's the most useful thing ever. A job security, essentially. But I do remember I applied for a couple of bursaries, but I never got them. Let's see, and then crop this. Yeah, that looks good. So let's see, after we cut a chunk from this valve, we use this cutter to get it down into little squares like this. After that, what did we have to do? We had to mount the samples using this machine over here. Well, there we go. Was it this? Oh no, this is the polishing machine. Wrong one. Whoops. Where is it? It was this one. The image of the samples in the molding machine. Yes. So let's see, after we cut it, we had these little squares. We place those squares into this sort of like a hydraulic press, along with some powder. Then, once they came out of that molding press, they looked like this. Steel samples were now encased in some resin. Nice round as well. Where is it? There we go. Issue now though was that if you look at that surface, it doesn't look too clean, right? It looks very rough. It looks very dirty. That is why the next step was to grind it and polish it using one of these fancy dancy spinning machines. Polishing and grinding machine. Once again, Microsoft Word being a pain in the ass and messing up all of the text. Where is it? There we go. Move this further down. Was it a Buchler? 2-speed grinder polisher machine. You can even see the samples mounted there, and those little circular holes. So let's see. And also let's include the grit papers, because the way those samples were grounded is they were placed face down on these little discs, which again you can't see. These discs here, almost like little sandpaper type of things. Let's crop that. They were placed on these sandpaper, and while they were spinning against it, it was getting lubricated by some emulsion. It was like, if I remember correctly, it was fluid that had tiny little diamonds or crystals. Like micron size, like 0.9 micron diamonds that would cut the surface clear. Images on WordSuck, I don't know, right? With the whole wrapping of the text, and it always jumps around every single time you copy an image in. But alas, it is something we have to deal with. Let's see. So we take the samples, we put it on, we have it grind against this disc here, as well with the special diamond fluid. And then at the end of it, we should get... Let's see, where is my image of it? Ah, here, there it is. Image like this. There you go. Look at that. Look at what these samples look like now, once I rotate it. And let's crop it as well. It's quite the difference, right? After grinding and polishing, to think that these 3 little samples here were these ones over here. Initially they were actually even had some like black resin covering it, a lot of scratches, a lot of marks, very dark, very gray, very ugly looking. And then after some grinding and polishing, they can almost look like a mirror. In fact, they did look like a mirror. Let's see then. Insert image of ground samples. Over there. I unfortunately did not take an image of the polished samples, so I don't have that. What I do have though is, once I find it, the fume hood. It was an interesting thing working in the lab for this assignment, because obviously the entire time I had to wear a lab coat, obviously for safety, just to make sure I didn't get dirty or whatever. And also had to wear latex, wasn't latex, what's it called? Nylon gloves. Think like the gloves doctors wear. It made my hands feel really funny after a while. Also had to wear safety goggles. And, oh, I mean, as always, just a mask for COVID regulations, but also another mask over it for fumes. The real kicker though was when we had to work underneath a fume hood. Like all of those precautions I mentioned now were for safety in operating the machines, right? Like this bad boy over here, which was the grinder. This bad boy over here, which was the mounter. And the cutter over here. But the last step we had to do for the preparation of the samples was to etch it, or to apply a chemical onto the surface of the sample to get rid of some other substances. The problem was that the chemical we had to apply was very, very toxic. It was a mixture of nitric acid and ethanol, which don't mix very well, so we had to work underneath a fume hood that entire time. Let's see. I can pull up the fume hood right here, actually. This was the fume hood. Let's crop it a bit. A bit dark, but you get the idea. you can actually see the 3 samples there on the table with some bottles of stuff, and there's like a glass door or a glass panel right over here on the front of it. What that was is so that we could work underneath it, and any fumes or gases that escaped from the mixture that we made, it would rise up, and instead of escaping into the room, it would get sucked into this like a vacuum in the roof of this. Think like when you're cooking and you have those hoods that suck up all the steam or the steam from the pot and pan. Do I like doing this kind of work? I'll be honest, not really. It's a bit of a bore, a chore, if you will. Hence why I thought I'd make it a little bit fun and stream it, you know, make it a little bit less boring. Since I have people to talk to, people to share it with. I'll admit, during like my other years, so like first, second, and third year and stuff like that, it was a bit more, I don't want to say fun, but engineering fascinated me in that, like I said, it's all physical things that you can understand. So it always felt cool when you could, like, let's say, learn about a plane taking off. You know, you could do calculations and say, oh hey, I now know why this plane was able to take off. You have to go at this speed, this angle, your plane must be this light or must have this much fuel and stuff like that, which at the time was really cool. But the odds are, when it comes to actual engineering work, you know, once you get a job, I'm sure it just eventually evolves down into simple paperwork, or, you know, doing work like this. It's definitely interesting, I'll say. You know, like, learning all of these things was fun. I like learning things. It's one of the most satisfying feelings in the world, I think. To learn something and say, oh, I understand this. I've got a grasp on this now. I understand it. It's really cool. I love learning things. But this work itself, it gets boring after a while. The type of stuff that I do enjoy is more what I'm doing now, in the sense of that I'm streaming it. You know, I'm able to share it. I have people around here who are willing to sit through and listen to me ramble on about all this stuff, or listen in, or at least just sit back and relax and, you know, listen to me speak. That's what I enjoy. But yeah, in terms of whether or not I like doing this, like this typing of reports, no, I hate it. Report typing is so boring. But like, in the moment when I was doing all this stuff, like when I was at the labs, it was kind of cool. It was a bit annoying though, because of all the protective gear I had to wear. Like, when it came to this fume hood stuff, I had to wear so many layers of protection because of the fear of the acid getting on my clothes or whatever. So I had to wear like 2 layers of gloves, 2 different gas masks, a thick pair of eye goggles and stuff like that, all in the name of safety. But, you know, safety does come first after all. You don't want to neglect that. Let's see. I mean, that's mainly one of the reasons why I've been procrastinating this project for so long. It's just so boring. That's why I was hoping that maybe this would give me an excuse to try and put some effort into it. Let's see. So that's the fumes. That. And then this is an example of an image of once we had applied the etchant onto it. There you can see the sample. There is a little devil's mixture of nitric acid and ethanol with a cotton swab. And let's see. I should probably add captions to these, but I'll do that at a later stage. I have them there at least. Let's save this along. What else was there that I had to do? Alright, there was some more literature review that I could do because I found out some more information, but I'll save that for another time. I don't feel like going back and finding it in my references. Instead, how should I title this section of my report? Categorizing the types of porosity using the Haralick texture features. Let's see. Coming up with fancy report writing. That's one of the worst things. Trying to make it sound like you know what you're doing. Let's see. In order. Be compared. So let's see. To determine the values for which the production images could be compared, the Haralick texture features of the reference images had to be calculated. How did I do that? I did that by... This was done by looking at each level for all 5 porosity categories. And what did I do? I took smaller reference cell that contained the porosity defects. And when I say smaller reference cells, there were, I think I specifically used a consistent, pixel size for the images. Every single image was, I think, 127 by 145 pixels. Let me see if I can find them actually and show them to you. some of the features. Like the bottom one is the raw image. The top one, I did a couple of things. I adjusted the light, so the light levels, and then I also, the big thing was I subtracted the background. So it's hard to tell, but if you look very, very carefully at this bottom image, you can actually see like these two big stringy parts here. They are present in that lower image, but it's very difficult to tell because, you know, there's so much gray everywhere around it. So one of the things I had to do was try and remove that gray background part and to really emphasize and bring out these black pores. That was a very, very important part of the work, was making these readable, or making the images readable for the computer to properly analyze them. Or images were processed in ways similar to the lung images and brains. Lung and brain. Obviously, the issue with reducing it into binary is that actually, no, it doesn't reduce accuracy. If anything, it makes it more accurate. So let's see. It was very important that I process images to look like this, because if I didn't, the analysis would end up showing that it is pretty much having no texture, which is pretty bad. Let's see what else was there. I should probably also mention the way I did it. What were the steps that I did to process the image? Let's see. This is very rough because I don't feel like typing it out in full. The first one was adjusting the brightness or the contrast to be at the lightest and darkest pixel values of the image. Then what did I do then? Image smoothing ×3 was a built-in function in the processing software I used. After that, subtract background function pixel . Oh, let's see, what happened if I used a smaller pixel radius? Smaller was better, right? Yeah. And then after that, I just converted it to binary. So if anything was over a certain darkness level, it was set to complete black, and otherwise it was white. So let's see. Why was a smaller pixel radius better? You don't have the concern of if there was a big one, or if there was a big splotch. Ah. That's that for the processing of the images. Let's have a look and see. Categorizing the types. Yeah, that's the big thing now. So, what did I do after I got the Haralick features? After that, I had them all in a big Excel spreadsheet, and then I conducted an ANOVA test. Do I want to call it a database? Let's see, multiple ANOVA tests, aka go ahead and include some of those graphs now, shall we? Oh, why is that bold? What were the other big graphs that were used? Energy contrast correlation was another one I know. Entropy was also a big one. Entropy is a surprisingly useful thing, considering it's sort of a meme that nobody knows what entropy is, or entropy is so hard to understand, yet we rely so much on it. I remember one thing we were always told is that if somebody tells you they understand entropy, you don't. They don't understand it then. TBH, is pretty relaxing hearing you talk while you're doing math. Oh, you're also doing math. Yes? Like I said, I'm glad that, you know, that's actually one thing that I'm glad I could have. I can help people out and help people relax and maybe help them get through some work. Let's see, entropy graph. There we go. Like I said, I don't expect people to understand my work and go through my try and like help me out or anything, but you know, maybe there are people out there like you, yes, who have some work they need to do themselves, and it definitely helps, I think, just having somebody else, not necessarily working with you, but just knowing that you're not alone, you know? Like, I know I'm not the only one doing work here, since Yas, you're also doing some work. Yeah, you finally got some motivation because of me. I'm glad. Maybe it's for the best then, since, you know, normally I'd just be playing a game. So instead of you sitting and watching me play some silly game like, what was it, Fall Guys or Idle Manager, stuff like that, we can both get some work done. You know, it's a win-win situation, both you and I. Let's see. Categorizing the types of porosity. So yeah, that looks very messy, but it'll work. Statistical p-values were used. That was a very big thing. How did I use these? Yeah, actually, by looking at the graphs, one can it can be seen visually that have you been streaming for a long time but still not popular? Come to stream. It's a bot. Cool, but no thanks. It's possible to determine what type of porosity it is, most likely just by looking at that. Because let's see, if you do have a production image and it does fall into one of these groups, what can then happen is, well, you have to cross-reference it with some of the other groups. So once a production image is analyzed, it's Haralick texture. Let's call it its texture features. Feature values, actually. Its texture feature values can be compared against the graphs. Which it most likely is. For example, if an image has contrast value of 3.5, then it is art. For example, if an image has a contrast value of 3.5, then it most likely contains porosity type CC. However, the values the rest of the values should be compared to their respective graphs as well. The rest of the values should be compared to their respective graphs as well to get an idea of porosity that is most likely to be. Let's see. What else is there to talk about for this? Categorizing the types of porosity. Still in the categorization, I didn't really talk much about it. There's not much to talk about, right? Determine the values for its product images. I can just, I suppose, talk about what you can see in the graphs. So if you have this energy graph, actually let me go back to this MRI section. I know, because if we have a previous work, in this case the MRI scan usage, they used a specific set of Haralick features. So in theory, if we just use that same set, they can't really fault us for anything, right? It's sort of been proven that it works if you use a specific set of Haralick features to compare your stuff with. Let's see then. What did they use? They used... I can find the image. Okay, they used... contrast, correlation, energy, entropy, and also homogeneity. So, wait, I think those are the exact same 5 that I have used already. Contrast, correlation, energy, entropy, homogeneity. Contrast, correlation, energy, entropy. I haven't included homogeneity. So let me quickly add that one in as well. Add that little graph in. There it is. That's 5, right? Yeah. Homogeneity. So then, let's have a look and see. Actually, let me take a sip of my water quickly. Ooh, I'm getting a bit thirsty. Alright, now that I have the 5 graphs up, how about I write a bit about them? It's always an easy way to get some extra words in. Literally just say what you see in the graph. Energy. Categories. Categories A, CA, and CB are overlapping. Categories CC and B are overlapping. I suppose one thing I can do, all of this stuff really, something I can maybe do if I need the word count or the space. Is to possibly include the p-value tables. Let's see. Next up is the contrast graph. Why does it keep changing my format? Alright, let's see. CC is very distinct. The rest of the categories. Meanwhile, there's a lot of overlap with others. Not all 4 of them overlap at the same time. Like for example, A overlaps with B and CA, but not CB. So let's just say there is a lot of overlap for the other 4 categories. And then for correlation, what is happening over there? Correlation, everything's actually, all 5 of these are distinct, if I'm not mistaken. all five categories are distinct. CA and CB visually look a bit closer. So I think definitely including the p-value table will help. Entropy graph, let's see. Once again, CC is distinct from the rest, as is category B actually. Meanwhile, the other three overlap. Now once again, for homogeneity, it's very similar to contrast actually, in that CC is very distinct while the other four groups are clustered together. That actually makes sense, that I feel like homogeneity is sort of like the opposite of contrast, right? I know energy and entropy are sort of tied hand in hand. Let's actually move it across. Because if you have a lot of wait, hang on. What? Whoops, wrong one. Contrast is the one I need to copy across. You're pretty happy you're getting a new math teacher since your old one literally made you not want to work. Aha. Yeah, I think having a good teacher is definitely really good. Like if you have a bad teacher that it just really throws a wrench in things, having a good teacher that motivates you and helps you is super useful. But I'm glad though that you're getting a new teacher. Yes, hopefully that new teacher is a lot better than the old one. Let's see. Yeah, homogeneity and contrast almost look like they're the exact opposites. One goes like that, other one goes like that. So it kind of makes sense, right? If you have high contrast, there wouldn't be... Oh yeah, because homogeneity is sort of like everything is similar, everything's the same. Contrast is the difference of things, so it only makes logical sense that if you have a high contrast, you would have a low homogeneity. It's an interesting thing to think about. Energy, entropy, homogeneity, contrast, correlation was the other one, right? She would literally just scream at you. So I'm glad she... Oh, that's not a very nice way to treat a student, just screaming at somebody. Yeah, I'm glad that she's leaving as well then in that case. Teachers shouldn't be screaming at their students. Should be encouraging them. Let's see. Correlation is the last one I need. I feel like I had that one somewhere. Alright, then let's copy it in. Where did it go? Oh, there it is. Correlation. They are all distinct actually here. I swear I wrote this down earlier. Let me do a quick Control F. Correlation. All of the categories are distinct from one another. CA and CB might not look like it initially, so it might be a good idea to include the p-value tables. Let's see then. Now that we have obviously I'll do a better write-up when it comes to the actual final report. Let's see how many pages do I have? 24 pages. That's not that bad, considering I haven't formatted any of this properly. I think I have a limit of 75 pages. Let's talk about the brain MRI. Let's see. Oh, this is one of the worst parts of literature reviews. Just reading through all these different papers, all these journals and stuff like that. Let's see. Let me actually share my screen so you can read along rather. This a bit. I guess if you want to, for some reason, read along the scientific report, brain MRI usage, then it's there. Let's have a look though and see. Haralick texture features from apparent diffusion coefficient ADC MRI images depend on imaging and pre-processing parameters. What a mouthful. In recent years, texture analysis of medical images has become increasingly popular in studies, investigating diagnosis, classification, and treatment response assessment of cancerous disease. Despite numerous applications in oncology and medical imaging in general, there is no consensus regarding texture analysis workflow or reporting of parameter settings crucial for replication of results. I feel like that's actually important to note. There's been no consensus on, what was it? Regarding textural analysis workflow. So there's no defined method yet. Or reporting of parameter settings crucial. So even though this work can become like, an objective way to do these things, there's still a sort of subjective thing in a sense of the way you go about processing the images can differ from person to person. That's an interesting thing to think about. Aim of the study was to assess how sensitive Haralick features of apparent diffusion coefficient are to changes in 5 parameters related to image acquisition and pre-processing: noise, resolution, how the map is constructed, the choice of quantization method, and the number of gray levels in the quantized image. They give a nice little abstract. We found that noise reduction, noise resolution, choice of quantization method, and the number of gray levels had a significant influence on most texture features. Okay, so this article says, based on their results, they recommend, so they give a recommendation on how you should process your images. What do they recommend? Similar resolutions and noise levels. Using one quantization method. And also the same number of gray levels in all quantized images. Question is, how many gray levels is the recommended amount for them? Let's see. To make meaningful comparisons of texture features, results between different subjects. Let's read through this. It's quite a long article. Texture analysis was developed in the 1970s as okay, well, I know the background of it. Let's get onto what they've actually done. Results. We varied 5 imaging and pre-processing parameters: noise level, resolution, how the ADC map was constructed, quantization method, and the number of gray levels in the quantized images to observe how they influence the resulting Haralick texture features. Figure 1 shows box plots of 5 commonly used Haralick features. There we go. That's a good important thing to note. The 5 commonly used Haralick features are contrast, correlation, energy, entropy, and homogeneity. Which checks out because in a previous study for the lungs, they used those same 5 Haralick features. So it does check out then, which is very cool. Let's see. For 72 regions of interest of the glioma dataset. 72. That's actually, funnily enough, the exact same amount of reference images I used. Contrast, entropy, and homogeneity changes significantly with all varied parameters except the B values related to the ADC map construction. Energy is significantly affected by changes in the number of gray levels, quantization levels, and noise, whereas correlation changes significantly only with resolution and image noise. So as long as we keep all of those consistent, then they can't really argue with the way we process images. Yes, they might say, but why do you reduce the images down to only being black and white purely? But actually, what I can then do is I can say that it's good that I did that, because when you reduce all 72 images, that's a lot of images. If I reduce them all down to black and white, at least I can say with confidence, all of these images contain either pure black or pure white. One of 2 values. Whereas, technically speaking, they might want to say, but if you use the raw images, surely it'd be better. I could say no. Yes, technically speaking, you could have a much more accurate matrix because you're including all of the different possibilities of the light levels or the gray levels, right? Instead of just narrowing it down to either black or white. But I can then say that could raise an issue. Out of those 72 images, they won't all have the same ranges of black or gray levels or black values of the pixels. So it's actually really good that I reduce them all down to black and white to keep it consistent. Because if there is a variation, then that could be very detrimental to the results. I mean, as I said here, a lot of things are significantly affected by the gray levels, or the number of gray levels rather. So let's have a look and see. Figure 2. Figure 2 is a heat map showing the probabilities that all settings for a given parameter give the same texture feature values. Figure 2a shows the results from the gliomas dataset, and Figure 2b shows the results from the prostate cancer dataset. The 2 leftmost columns in each heat map show pre-processing steps when generating the GLCM, and column 3 to 5 in A and 3 to 4 in B show imaging settings. GLCM size has the largest effect on all texture features except for correlation in both datasets. and cluster shade and information measure of correlation 1 in the prostate dataset. The GLCM size, or in other words, how many gray levels are included, it does affect things. And that could throw a wrench in my work. Considering I will be using a very tiny GLCM. But they don't really say whether it's good or not having smaller or larger GLCMs. It just has an effect. They don't mention whether it's a good or bad effect. But I think in theory, if it has an effect on everything, so it's like everything is adjusted at the same rate, surely that should be fine, right? Let's see. And there's a picture of a brain. Oh wait, here's an in summary. In summary, to meaningfully compare texture features values of quantitative data such as ADC maps between patients, we have the following recommendations. Please tell me your recommendations. Use images with similar resolutions and noise levels. Okay, I've done that. Use one quantization method. With quantitative data such as ADC maps, a manual limit is preferable. Find the range of intensities that are common for all datasets in the cohort or that reflect the anatomy or information of interest, and use that as a common limit for all images. So in other words, do the same process for all of them. Use one GLCM size. The number of gray levels should be chosen so that intensity variations in the relevant regions are resolved. Okay, that's an important bit. So, not only should you have the same number of gray levels, but when it comes to how many gray levels you have, it should be, let's see, let me write that down. Number of gray levels chosen. Oh, should be chosen. Should be chosen so that intensity variations in the relevant regions are resolved. Question is, what does that mean? Intensity variations in the relevant regions are resolved. So intensity variations are simply just the comparison between two pixels, you know, whether it's slightly gray and a slightly darker gray, or whether it's pure black versus pure white. That would be a very intense variation. But I think if we keep it consistent, then it should be fine, right? Even if it is a very small GLCM. And this is just theory or the background on Parallel texture features, the methods, references, and everything else. Oh, like half of this document is just references and other info. Only half of it is the actual meat of the report. I feel like that's most things though, to be fair. Yeah, well, that's that done, I suppose. We didn't get too much image or information out of it, but we did get some important pieces. So that report showed that there is currently no textural workflow for the medical field. I think it was the medical field specifically, right? Textural analysis of medical images, yeah. Or medical images. which is a problem because people can process it in different ways. However, they set out to try and not necessarily streamline it, but they gave recommendations. Some of those recommendations were to have similar resolutions for your images, which I've done. Similar noise levels using one method and having the same gray level in all of those images. And they also mentioned commonly used hierarchic features are contrast, correlation, energy, entropy, and homogeneity, which I have also used, which is very cool. And let's see, coming back around to the processing of the images and that I have written, one of the things I should probably include is that all of my images also actually followed those rules. They all had the same resolution. They were all 175 by 124, and they were all 100 micron images. All of the were 175 by 124 pixels of a 100 micron image. There was another piece of information I think that was important. I think it was somewhere in the report. They call it regions of interest. Let me also use that the fancy word there. All regions of interest, or in other words, ROI, these regions of interest were simply just the small snippets. Now then, actually look at the proper wording of this one, of this thing. Hierarchic texture features from apparent diffusion depending on imaging. So let me title this sort of section, I suppose. Hierarchic feature dependencies on imaging and pre-processing parameters. I'll even give it a fancy heading. So that was a very big point of contention, right? The whole thing is to make it as objective as possible, but then you still have a subjective step in the system. It's a little bit sketchy. Let's have a look and see. I could probably talk more about the processing of the images, right? I feel like I can. Let's have a look and see, shall we? Proper calculations of the hierarchic texture features, the GLCM would need to be as accurate as possible. One issue with the raw images is that there's not much contrast to differentiate between pores and the actual solid background. The images were processed in ways like how... What? The images were processed similarly to the lung and brain images. This improves the accuracy, where they were reduced to binary black and white images. Result in values. That suggests the image being analyzed was solid color with little to no, was a smooth surface with little to no texture. That sounds a bit better. Let's see. And then also I can mention about how there is the regions of interest that are all, like I mentioned in the MRI thing, they have the 175 by 124 pixels. So it's all the same thing. And then it's also a same scale. Great. And let's see. And then I just also mention the quantization method, which is consistent. You know, I do the same thing to each image, which is really cool. And let's have a look and see. Oh. What else is there that I can mention about these? Not really much, right? I can comment on, I suppose, afterwards, after comparing them to... Oh, I can mention that I was done using a specific app, Fiji app. Done using Fiji app. All of this was done using an image processing application called, I think it's just called Fiji, right? Unless it's a whole fancy name for it. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, it's literally just called Fiji app. Fiji.app. I don't know if that makes a difference. Let's see then. What else was there that I can talk about in this? Then I can probably, yeah, I should probably mention, like, I'll have to give a caption or something for it anyway, so let's see. The images above are of the same area, of the same region of interest, actually. Or from a reference image. The one on the left being, or any pre-processing, while the other being after processing methods mentioned. Ooh, I think one other good thing I can do is, you know, I was talking about how the hieroglyphic features will differ between the two. I actually have the features labeled. Not labeled, but I have them ready, so I can reference those immediately. So here, comparing comparing raw rather. Processed image. Hieroglyphic features. Let's have a look and see then. "24 pages. That's quite a bit, and like I said, that's without taking into consideration all of the fancy, captions and everything that I should be doing, and the format, stuff like that. So, have a look and see, shall we? Out of curiosity, let me pull up the supposed template that I should be following, right? If I were to do the regular format, how would it look? Pull up the templates. And let's have a look and see. I didn't even have the actually plagiarism declaration doesn't count. It starts from the introduction. So Calibri 12, that is how it's supposed to work. Let's zoom out a bit. This is the body. And starting from here, right? Use the proper body text, if I can find it. Just one body? Oh. Where is it? I'll just do this. Format Painter. Obviously, I'm gonna type up a bit more of that. I don't think this will fly for an actual report. And let's see. Processing of the images. This can be a little heading of its own. There would probably be something before it though. So, like section 3. What would it be called? Categorizing? Defining the categories? I mean, they already are defined, so it's more about putting them in actual categories. It's fine. So then the next topic would be processing the images, which is a big thing. Then the next thing would be getting those hierarchic features. So acquiring the hierarchic features. That's where the MATLAB stuff comes in. So I can see. For that, it's essentially just talking about how I used MATLAB for it. And then I just threw them all. I can talk about the code. And then I can mention the Excel spreadsheet. And then let's see, categorizing. Actually, this can go somewhere else. This can go earlier here. That's talking about how I decided on the images. Let's see. That can be a section for the results, almost not necessarily results, but graphs of hierarchic features. The ANOVA tests to compare. And that's essentially just talking about how those graphs came to be. Then section 4 can be like the sort of the production aspect, right? Whereas everything before this was all theoretical, right? It's all reference samples, reference images. Nothing really new per se. Whereas here, I am now... let's see. Cutting the samples to size. See what else was there. Other than cutting the samples down to size, there was also what else was there? Mounting the sample. Then there was polishing and grinding, and then finally etching. Section here. Polishing and grinding. Then after that, it is the etching. One other thing I can do after that is I can start include images. Let's see. Maybe do a thing where I can let's have a look and see. This is truly relaxing. I'm glad you think so, Kenrico. I'll admit it is quite, at least for me, not necessarily stressful, but it is quite mundane going through all this work. But I'm glad you're able to find it relaxing at least. Let's see. After etching, another thing I need to touch on. The importance of doing the importance of doing these steps correctly. Importance of proper sample preparation. Because actually, funnily enough, when I went and worked in the labs and, you know, did my sample preparations, they actually didn't turn out too well. I mean, I got results, I got images, but they weren't really that great. They weren't what I was expecting. Turns out there was a number of things that sort of caused it to go wrong. Whether it be the incorrect way we cut it initially, so there's not really a way to go back and fix that, to not having the correct polishing liquids, which was also pretty bad. But I was very adamant in saying I still want to use images. I know they're wrong. I know they technically aren't correct per se, but I still wanted to use them as a way to like learn from the mistakes. Because otherwise, if I don't use them, then that's a big chunk of my report gone. So I was actually very lucky in that I can talk about here mention the things that went wrong with my own samples. So these earlier sections will just be me talking about the way in which I got the production images. When it comes to here, I'll mention that my samples aren't the greatest. Show images of what they look like. But my co-supervisor actually, he did it separately. He has his own images, and they are much better, much clearer, much more usable. So in theory, technically speaking, they're not my images, but I'll still include them. Supervisor. Show. Compare it against the co-supervisor's better images to show what a difference it makes when you prepare these samples properly. Now let's have a look and see. After that, the other thing that I would need to touch on is actually proving that what I do works. So let's see, would it be a new section like section 5, or would it just be 4.6? Let's make it section 5. Actually attempting to categorize it. So for this one, I'll use my own sample images, despite knowing that they are imperfect, but I will still use them as a proof of concept. Because obviously in the previous section, I would have outright said that my images aren't that great to use. So, let's see. Use my own sample images, despite knowing they are imperfect, but I'll still use them as proof of concept. I'll have to mention how exactly I will try to categorize the porosity. So, 3 samples. I know where they were located. And let's see, of those 3 samples, I will have multiple different microscopic images, right? And then even further, from those microscope images, I'll have several ROI, regions of interest. Oh, interest, if I can spell it correctly. And then what I'll do is, similar to the reference images, I'll go through each and every one of them and analyze the calculate the Haralick values for each of those production regions of interest, ROIs. And what I mean by production is the sort of the real life, the actual final product thing. And let's see then. Once I have all of those calculated, for each region of interest, compare it against the graphs, the ANOVA graphs. And let's see, try to assign a type to each region of interest. based on which category, which porosity type it falls into the most often. It falls into most often. Is that correct English? I think so. And then obviously the issue will be if you have one image with 5 regions of interest. You have to work your way back outwards then. So you have 5 regions of interest. Take the average. Take the average from the regions of interest to find what the microscopic image porosity type might be. Then again, you take one step further out. Take the average from the microscopic images to figure out what that sample's porosity type might be. And Yas also agrees, Kinrika, that it is a relaxing stream. Like I said, I'm glad that you're able to find it relaxing. It's a nice change of pace from playing silly, wacky games. I think it's how it should be when you're trying to get some work done. Sitting back and relaxing and able to really focus on what it is that you're doing. Let's see. Attempting to categorize the sample. Then I'll just do this as a case study almost. And then obviously after that would be conclusions, which I can't really get into right now because I can't conclude it if I haven't actually done any of the work just yet. But let's see. I've gotten, like, technically speaking, I have 30 pages written so far, 5,500 words. And I'll be honest, I feel like I can easily expand on this more, considering some of the stuff I've written down, it's more just ideas and concepts that I have. I mean, look at this. Acquiring hierarchic features. It's just 3 lines, not even full sentences. But I can obviously definitely expand on those. So I think that might be a good place to call it. I mean, it's been what, 2.5 hours of work? I know it might not be much. I'm sure people's actual jobs, they work 8 hours a day, but I've been going for 2.5 hours, and I think I'm quite happy with the progress that I've made. So hopefully though, those of you who are watching, you've enjoyed your time here for the past 2.5 hours. Whether you were just sitting around lurking, listening to me ramble on, and watching me work, whether, you were actually invested and tried to learn something new. I apologize if I didn't really do much in terms of teaching you anything. Or if you were, just sitting and working with yourself as well. Almost like a study buddy of types. I'm doing my work, you're doing your work, we're all doing it together. I hope that you enjoyed the stream. It was something very different that I've done. Considering pretty much everything I've done in the past was, games or related to playing a game or something like that. This is definitely something very, very different from usual. Is the stream over already? Apologies, yes, but well, actually, do you still have your homework, yes, or do you still need like somebody to speak with you, or not to speak with you, but to keep you company while you do your work? It was really nice. I'm glad. Because I'll be honest, it's more of I wouldn't say the stream is over, but rather I feel like I am content with the work that I have done. Maybe I'll consider doing something else if I can think of something else to do. Let's have a look and see what is there else. I know one thing that I don't mind doing. Oh, Kenrico, let's see. So there are 5 levels of porosity in steel sand castings. To calculate how much gas there is, defects, so that the castings are safe, the manufacturers need to check them to be below at least a 3rd level of porosity. Well, I wouldn't say 3rd level, but you know, it's up to them. They could say 4th level, 2nd level. How to check which level of porosity the castings are at? Mostly done by eye guessing from radiographs. Yep, that is how they were previously done. But it's relieving you said that there are methods to eliminate uncertainty. Okay. But yeah, Kenrico, you pretty much got it spot on. Like you said, there are 5 levels of porosity in steel sand castings, and you know, there are certain levels that we try and accept or reject. But the problem is it's always done by eye, which is very subjective. You know, some people can look at it and see 2 different things completely. So my job is, well, somebody else has already developed a way to find out what level it is, so that's pretty cool. But the issue is that in order for them to do what they've done, you need to get the correct type of porosity. And right now, there's no real way to do that, which is what I'm trying to do. So that is what my work is. But yeah, I'm surprised you were able to pretty much follow along with all of that. I'm glad though. You didn't really have any homework, you were just doing old homework from like 1 to 2 years ago. I see. I mean, I suppose it's always good to, you know, get some practice in, even if it is 1 to 2 years ago. I know if I were to, you know, pull up work from 1 to 2 years ago, I would be absolutely lost. Even though, you know, when I did it, it was perfectly fine. I could do it easily. It's just, yeah, you know, if you don't do it, if you don't keep at it, you sort of lose the skill, or you lose the ability to do it, which is pretty scary to think about. That's why they always say practice, 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 right? You keep at it and you don't lose that skill. But let's see. You know, I did say that it was over in the sense of I'm finished with the work, but I feel like there's some other stuff that I feel like doing. Because I feel like streaming for a bit longer. It's been a relaxing time, and I feel like there's some other stuff we can do. In fact, I know just what I want to do. It's been something that I've been wanting to do for a while, is jigsaw puzzles. Let me see if I can find it up. See, Kenrico also agrees. It's good to practice. It's always good to practice. Let's see. Oh, wait, no, what is it? It's Jigex, isn't it? Jigsaw Explorer. Whoops. Because I feel like, you know, it's once you finish your work, you always want to reward yourself, right? You want to relax. And some people, they'll treat themselves to like some snacks, or they'll go and they'll play a game or a video game or something, you know, to reward themselves for a job well done. So, I wonder what your teachers think about you turning in your homework 2 years late. They would probably completely confused as to what's going on. Like, what? Where is this homework coming from all of a sudden? What is happening? What is going on? But let's actually do this. Let's see. For window capture. This is gonna be something interesting, I suppose. Oh, I bumped my mic. Something a little fun, I think. After some hard work. If I can get this to be resized properly. Oh, look and see if I can get this right. I won't fit it in the window, but it'll work, I think. Now, let's have a look and see here. Create a game link. Wait for this to load. Aha. So, how about after some hard work, we all have some relaxing times playing some Jigsaw. Let me just hide this or close out of Microsoft Word. And as you can see, I've got the board all set up and ready. And let's have a look and see. No politics? No politics, yes. In fact, instead, I've actually posted the link in chat. And if you click on that, it should open up in the browser. And if you want, you can join in and help me solve this jigsaw puzzle. I think I'll just do one puzzle, maybe two. We'll see how it goes. And just have a relaxing end of the evening with a classic old jigsaw puzzle. This is a puzzle of, what is it? What looks like I suppose, an old style petrol station or something like that. A Texaco on Route 66 with a gift shop and everything. So then, let's have a look and see. It should be working, I think, if you click there. So let's see. Of course, what do you always do? You start from the edges, right? That's what everybody does. And let's have a look and see. Let's get all the right side pieces around here. But yeah, feel free to join the jigsaw puzzle. And we can start working. It's a fairly simple puzzle, I think. There's not too many pieces. And let's have a look and see. You know, you always do the classic finding the outer edges, right? But once we get down to the, what is it? The inner parts, that's when things are going to get difficult, I think. So let's have a look and see. Oh, Kinriko is already putting some pieces together, I see there in the corner. And Ruby is also getting pieces up there. Wow, you guys are putting pieces together so much faster than me. I feel like I'm not even doing much here. I'm just messing around. You guys are connecting pieces left, right, and center. Oh, no, there we go. I finally got a piece in myself. Oh, that bottom right side is coming together really nicely. Let's see. Let's put some other pieces there as well. The right side pieces go here. Left side pieces there. And let's see. Some more left side pieces here. Other pieces up there. And I think that's pretty much all of them sorted, right? Another one on the left there. The trick you said is what made you remember the outer edges. Aha! I see. Let's see. I think we have them all like in their relative positions, so have a look and see. Oh, that right side is coming along really nicely, I think. Let's see then. Don't forget, you can always hover over the image at the top there, and you get a glimpse of what it's supposed to look like. I don't know if that's cheating, but I don't think it is. I mean, when you buy a puzzle, the box already shows you the image right at the end. So I don't think it's that bad to know what it is that you're trying to build. Plus it also motivates you. You want to try and see the cool image at the end, right? So if you know what it looks like, it definitely helps. Let's see. Oh, the entire right side is actually done now. That's really nice. Ooh! Kenrico. Touching a giant piece there. Some major progress. And, I think I see the entire rest of that border is coming along really nicely. Let's see then. Can we make it go all the way around though, is the question. It's a grassy patch over here. There we go. Let's see. Oh, the left side is done now, looks like. Ooh, everything is done now. Just the bottom part here. It just looks like a bunch of pavement or something, right? Let's see. Oh, there we go. That's the outside. Oh my goodness. Whew, now with all the other pieces, it's a whole other ball game. Yay, indeed. Let's see. Whew, it's a lot harder now that there's no edges to help us out. Let's see. Okay, never mind. Apparently it's easy for Kenrico. Just gunning it for the car there. I suppose you can look for like similar color pieces, right? We know that it's a car there in the corner, so let's have a look for the rest of the car maybe. Put that piece there. And let's see. You can always cheat, I suppose, and have a look at the final image. What else is there? Let's see. What is that a roof? Like all of that's line stuff. Oh, like scales. Oh yeah, it is the roof. The big Texaco sign. I think like that's almost like a landmark of sorts. So let's see. There's also a lot of signage as well. I know there's a car in the lower left hand side as well. Let's try and gather all of those car pieces up there. Let's see. Is this also part of the car? I don't know. It's hard to tell. Ah, there we go. I feel like the right hand side is the easier side. I don't know why. I think it's just because either things are a lot more distinct on that side. Like the left side is just a big roof, which is, it all blurs together, so it makes it hard to see. Or hard to tell what piece goes where. The flag, yeah. Oh, this is like a road. The road part, right? Sky's up there. I don't know where that sky goes. This is also a road part here, I think. Yeah. The road looks like it's an easy thing to follow along with, to try and build. So, let's see. There we go. And is this also a part of the road? Ah. I see Ruby or... yeah, I see you're building like the roof, it looks like. I recall. Or if that's what it looks like to me. It's a bold strategy. Or a bold attempt. Trying to build that roof up there. But somebody's gonna have to do it eventually, so... I'm glad that you're working on it now. Let's see. sign things, which I think is the wall, maybe? Oh yeah, the wall of this building has a lot of like fancy signs and stuff like that. There? Oh, is that Goodyear? Is that? Oh, it's like a tire. Yeah, it's Goodyear tires. Speaking of tires, let's see. Ooh, good spot, Yas, with the tip of that roof there. I can't wait till like the last pieces are all the roof parts, because that's the hardest. It looks like it's the hardest pieces for us to figure out. Oh wait, this car is coming along pretty nicely on the left side there. Let's see. Let's see. Oh. Where's the rest of this car? Like a truck, I think, on the left side here. I feel like there's so much space. It feels like there's so many things missing, but obviously it's just hard to find them, I think. Let's see. Let's complete this big ass sign up here. Yes, I don't know how you're doing it, but you're getting all of these roof pieces really easily. Which is crazy considering, you know, it's almost like the equivalent of people doing a solid white puzzle, right? It's all so similar. It's hard to tell what piece goes where. Let's see. Ooh, I feel like we're really picking up the pace now, though. It's becoming a lot easier and easier to build as we go along. Let's see. Ooh, that right side is looking. The right side is pretty much eking its way done. Let's see. This car, though, on the left side is still perplexing me. I mean, there's even like that one gap there. Oh, wait a minute.